Hi, my name is Ethan. I am an educator for the Artesian Alliance, which is the Cheehaw Park and Zoo, the Thronatiska Heritage Center, and the Flint River Aquarium here in Albany, Georgia. And today I am going to talk to you guys about nocturnal and diurnal animals and what the difference between the two is. So to start, um, we should define what nocturnal and diurnal actually are, right? So nocturnal animals are animals that are active at night, and diurnal animals are active in the daytime. So nocturnal, nighttime, diurnal, daytime. Pretty straightforward. Um, so uh, these animals, nocturnal animals and diurnal animals, both need different things to be able to survive and thrive in their ecosystems. Um, so there are some adaptations that these animals might have to help them better hunt at night or better hunt in the daytime or survive in either one. And so let's talk about things that creatures need to survive. What are some things that creatures need to survive? Well, they need food, they need water, they need some kind of shelter, and they need some space. And we're going to add one more here. They need to be able to move and make their way to their food, water, shelter, which goes with the space. Um, so um, nocturnal animals are going to need to be able to get all of these things, just like diurnal animals are, right? So let's think about us. We are diurnal. We're active during the daytime, or at least that's what our parents and teachers always try to make us, right? Here in the mornings. I know I'm way more active in the afternoon than the morning, but um, how do we get our food? Well, uh, some of us get our food by picking some plants. Maybe we eat animal meat like beef or hot dog, maybe. Hot dogs are one of my favorite forms of meat, but um, our shelter is our home, right? We live there, and we got tons of space. We can move around pretty freely. So I'm going to show you guys some animals, and we are going to figure out if they're nocturnal or diurnal. Um, so I think to start, I'm going to show you guys a real fun creature here. Let me just grab it. So this is a screech owl. Doing all right there? This is a screech owl. And so do you think a screech owl is nocturnal or diurnal? So let's try to find out, right? So let's look at some of its body parts, and maybe we can sort of figure out if it's nocturnal or diurnal by looking at it a little bit more closely. So if he might turn his head to look at you a little bit here, but look at his eyes. See how big those eyes are? Um, so that might give away something about him. His eyes are actually extremely large compared to his body. If our eyes were that big in like proportionally, our eyes would be about the size of a tennis ball. So imagine like a tennis ball eye, huge, right? And their eyes are actually so big that owls cannot move. They don't have muscles that can move their eyes. So whenever you need to look left, what do? You just look left. If you need to look right, you just look right, right? You don't even need to move your head. But owls can't do that. Owls have to move their whole head whenever they look left, and they have to move their whole head whenever they look right. So you can try that yourself here. Imagine you were an owl and you can't move your eyes. They have to stay straight ahead, but suddenly you hear something to the left of you. You got to look. You can't. It's really silly, isn't it? But yeah, these guys have to move their head. Now, he might not do it here, but because he's being a little lazy today. But owls can move their head almost the whole way around their body. They can move it 270 degrees, which is 3/4 of a circle. So imagine that you just took a corner out of a circle, and that's how far that they can move their head around. We can really only do about 180-ish or so, but they can do 270 degrees, almost all the way around their heads. So they can see virtually everywhere around them. So let's look at some other body parts of an owl and see if we can determine if it's nocturnal or diurnal. It's kind of small and it looks brown, right? So this owl is actually really well adapted to camouflage. So it will sit up in a tree, and if this guy's sitting in a tree, you think you're ever going to see him? Probably not, right? Because he looks exactly like a tree. And he's got these talons, which are currently on my finger, but these talons are great for picking up animals. And if you notice, his legs are kind of fuzzy and furry. Kind of hard to tell here, but maybe I can get you to see it. His legs are kind of fuzzy. You see that? And his fuzzy legs actually combined with his wings and his body here. His wings have all got a ton of feathers on them, and they're all very well adapted to flying silently. So they can move pretty much completely silently in the night whenever they move. And I think I just gave it away here. They're nocturnal. So these big eyes help them to take in a whole lot of light because it's very dark out. And so they can see a lot better at night. And they've got these specialized wings that make them silent flyers, and they can move their head really far in either direction to make it so that they can see in virtually every direction. And actually, you can't see it on them, but they've got excellent ears as well. So their ears, where are your ears? Your ears are on the side of your heads, right? And they're both at the same height. Their ears are not at the same height. One of their ears is actually kind of facing forward a little bit and is slightly higher, and the other ear is facing backwards and is slightly lower. And their entire face helps direct sound to their ears. So what I want you to do is I want you to try out being an owl. So I want you to take your hand and cup your ear facing forward one way, and I want you to take your other ear and cup it facing backwards. And I want you to close your eyes and spend about 10 seconds trying to see what you can hear in front of you and behind you that way. So we're going to try that here real quick. Now, I'm only going to use one of my ears here to hear behind me, but you guys should do both. So one in front and one behind. See if you can hear things a little bit differently. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? You suddenly can hear things that are maybe over there that you didn't notice before, or maybe behind you a little bit that you didn't notice before. That's how owls can hear. And what they'll do is, because they can swivel their head around, they'll listen for maybe a mouse in a field, and they'll listen and they'll hear, and then they'll move their head again, and they'll move their head again, and eventually they'll get it so that they know exactly where that mouse is based off of the sound, and then they'll swoop in completely silently and take it off. It's really, really kind of incredible. They are one of the most effective predators in the entire animal kingdom. They almost always are able to catch the mouse if they're after it. They'll eat other things like bugs and stuff too. So this guy is an example of a nocturnal animal, right? Because of all of the things that it has that makes it excellent for hunting and moving around at night. So it can get its food by its silent flying. It can find its food using its ears and its eyes. It gets its water in the same kind of way. It'll just find water and drink it. Shelter, it'll hide in logs and whatnot, and trees. It'll sit in the crook of trees. Do you mind grabbing me a napkin from inside of the restroom over there? Thank you. He just pooped, so they do that too. And they will let's see, that we got the food, we got the water, we got the shelter, and they use their wings to give them plenty of space. Thank you very much. Um, whew, it's kind of stinky when they do that. All right, we'll get that cleaned up more afterwards here. So that's how screech owls hunt, and all of that is extremely well suited to hunting at night, right? So I'm going to put this guy back, and we're going to move on to the next animal, and we're going to try to figure out if that one is nocturnal or diurnal. So this one's definitively nocturnal. All right. Got here is maybe an animal you've never seen before. You see him? What's this is a blue-tongued skink, and she's showing off why she's called blue-tongued skink right now. See that blue tongue? Oh yeah. So blue-tongued skinks are a lizard. Um, they are found in Australia, um, and they used to be a lot more common than they are. They're endangered now, but uh, these guys um, like to hang around in fields and eat pretty much anything that comes by. So they will eat plants, they will eat bugs, they will eat very small animals, pretty much anything that they can get their hands on in front of them. And these guys, you can see they've got a fairly long, kind of stubby looking body. Um, and let's take a close look at what what kind of adaptations this guy has, and we will figure out if it is nocturnal or diurnal. So the last time, I think the first thing I pointed out were the owl's eyes. The owl's eyes were very large and very well suited to the nighttime. So this guy also has eyes, as you can see here. And its eyes, it's probably very hard to see on the screen here, but it's got pupils just like we do. And it can actually dilate those pupils, which is a really fancy way of saying that their pupils can shrink or get larger to take in light. Our eyes do that. Have you ever seen like maybe yourself in the mirror and it's kind of dim, so your pupils are really big, but then maybe whenever you get into the light, your pupils get real small. Theirs do the same thing. So they can adjust to bright light pretty well. So that might be an indication of whether or not they're nocturnal or diurnal. Um, they are they've got this sort of darker coloration on them, and that helps them to blend in with the grasses and the dirt that they hang out in. They like to hang out in like clearings, fields, lawns. They're actually fairly common in Australia. People find them in their lawns all the time. Um, and they've got this big blue tongue. Now, what do you think this big blue tongue is for? Why would a tongue be blue? Well, the answer is that they ward off predators with it. So imagine you were a predator going around and your favorite thing to eat are lizards. And you see this big lizard here and you're like, this seems like a great meal. But then sticks out its blue tongue and it opens its mouth and its mouth is all blue too. And you're like, oh, that's weird. Never seen a lizard with a blue tongue. Must be sick or something. I don't want it. It'll just leave it alone. That's how they convince predators not to eat them is by sticking out their blue tongue. Now, works with natural predators, but things like dogs and cats, they don't care. They're just going to attack this blue tongue skink anyways, which is why they're actually endangered. So many different animals like dogs and cats and even just urban development is making them go extinct. But there's a lot of people working really hard to try to keep them going. So they're probably going to be around for a little while. Um, some other things that it has, if you notice, kind of like the owl, its ears are not on the outside. It's actually got these two little ear holes kind of on the back here. You see? They're right here. Um, it's got ears. It's got inner ears. It can hear things pretty well, and its ears are actually kind of on the back of its head, and that's to help it out. Its hearing is directed backwards so that it can tell if something's sneaking up on it. Because this guy's not the most agile animal in the world. It can't move super fast. So instead, it relies on knowing if a creature is trying to sneak up on it ahead of time. Um, so they've got these big eyes, this bright blue tongue, um, uh, the excellent hearing from behind. Um, so what do you think? Do you think the animal's nocturnal or diurnal? Uh, the animal is actually, this blue-tongued skink is actually diurnal. And the ways that you can tell, probably the biggest giveaway is the eyes. So because it has these eyes, they're not very large eyes, but they're able to dilate to adjust to bright light. That tells you that it probably lives in bright light, which is the daytime. It's very bright out. The sun's shining right now, which is why half of my face is bright white in the camera. But yeah, um, that's probably the biggest giveaway. Another thing that might give it away is the fact that it uses its blue tongue to ward off predators. If it tried to use its blue tongue to ward off predators in the nighttime, probably wouldn't work because it's hard to see a blue tongue in the nighttime. They actually can see color as well with their eyes, which is not something that's very common in nocturnal animals. Nocturnal animals, they're not that great at seeing color because they don't really need to. You're generally at night, you're trying to determine brightness, how bright something is compared to something else. So color's not the biggest deal at night, but they can see color. They've got dilating pupils. They hunt bugs and other things by just grazing around. And they use that blue tongue to ward off predators and everything. So all of that combined, this creature probably hunts in the daytime, right? Um, so that's actually, you might have heard that lizards can remove their tails. That is true with the blue-tongued skink as well. If they feel really threatened, they will shed their tail, and their tail will wiggle around, and that'll trick. Ooh, he's on the move. That'll trick a predator who's after it to go after the tail instead. I think he's starting to get a little stressed out, so I'm going to put this blue tongue skink back. So, by the way, this one's name is Blue Jean, which is kind of funny. So say bye to Blue Jean, and we're going to move on to our next animal to figure out if it's nocturnal or diurnal. All right, so the next animal I have is not a living animal. Instead, I have the skeleton of an animal. And you probably are going to be able to tell me right off the bat if this creature is nocturnal or diurnal, but you might be surprised. It's a bat. You get it? Because it just said right off the bat. Um, so this is a bat skeleton, and if you notice, it's really not that big. This is probably a little brown bat skeleton, but it's just labeled as bat skeleton, so I can't be sure. These guys, bats, you think bats, they come out at night, right? That's not necessarily true. They come out at sunset. And they're also active around sunrise as well. And that's because this kind of bat, microbats, the really small kind, they like to eat bugs. And bugs are most active right at the end of the day and right at the beginning of the day. So they can be nocturnal, but I'm going to use a big fancy word, crepuscular, to describe them. That means that they are active in between day and night. The screech owl also can be crepuscular as well, but it kind of just depends on where the screech owl is and what they're hunting, whether or not they're nocturnal or diurnal. So let's take a closer look at this bat skeleton. Um, there are some things that you might notice. It's going to be really hard to see its face here, but it's got this tiny little face. Just, yeah, you can kind of see it. It's got this tiny little face with these really itty bitty little teeth, and they're kind of sharp little nubby teeth, and that's actually what it uses. It grabs hold of things like moths and mosquitoes and other small flying insects, and it uses its very sharp teeth to just grab it and then swallow it and eat it. Um, they are extremely tiny, as you can tell, and the bones are extremely thin, and that's because they need to be very lightweight to be able to fly. Um, its hands are built the same way that our hands are, but here, here's the shoulder, here's the elbow, right about there. There's the elbow. But then, whenever you get up to the hand itself, you'll notice it's got a tiny little thumb, and then all of its fingers are extremely long. So those are all just very, very long fingers. Imagine if your fingers were that long. It'd be kind of crazy, right? Um, so very, very long fingers. And it uses its fingers in between its fingers. You know how you've got a little bit of a kind of skin flap there between your fingers? Well, theirs is really long because they've got these very long fingers. And what they'll do is they'll flap really hard, and their skin will catch air and it will cause them to be able to fly. Um, Little brown bats also have a tiny little tail. It's kind of long compared to the bat, but it's a very, very small tail. And they'll use that. That also has skin flaps on it. And so they'll use it as kind of like a back sail, like a rudder, to help them maneuver. Now, this kind of flying that they do, it's not like how birds fly, where they use these big wings to create large gusts of air and then they glide around. Bats, bats kind of just flap a lot, and they're able to move really quickly and really agile. They're really, really agile animals. Um, and so bats will hang around. They'll fly around trees generally, or in big open spaces, and they'll do a lot of swooping and a lot of quick turns. Um, uh, and what they'll do is, because it's nighttime, because it's really dark, and they need to move really quickly through um, difficult areas like trees and whatnot, they actually have a very special way of knowing where they are in relation to other things. They have what's known as echolocation. And echolocation is what they do is they make really sharp, high-pitched noises, just a lot of little chirps. Um, and they'll chirp constantly. They're actually very loud animals. They are some of the loudest mammals in the entire animal kingdom. But we never hear them because they're at such a high frequency that our ears can't pick them up. Uh, but they'll chirp constantly as they're flying around, and they they'll the chirps will bounce back, and they'll use their excellent hearing to determine where something is compared to where other things are. So chirp, return chirp, that's how they know that something's there. If they don't hear anything return, that's how they know that it's a lot further away. So they'll chase down these moths and mosquitoes and other bugs that are fluttering around by just hitting them. And their ears are so good that they can actually hear the flapping of their wings as well, like the little bugs' wings. And they'll chase it around and chase it around, and then they'll catch it and they'll eat it. Um, and they'll just do this for a couple hours every night. And then finally, whenever they go to rest, they will hang by their legs and just dangle for the rest of the night while they sleep. um, it's not that comfortable if you try it, so I wouldn't if I were you. Um, so they're extremely well adapted to not being able to see, which is why a lot of people, which is why they can be nocturnal, but because their food generally comes out right between whenever the sun's fully down and before it's properly nighttime, they generally tend to be awake in between the day and the night, in the twilight. Um, and so that is how bats hunt for food. They get their food, they get their water actually from the creatures that they eat. Some bats will swoop down and kind of grab the water with their leg pouch, and then they'll slurp it up really quick before gravity takes over. Um, their shelter is they live in trees and caves and even bat boxes. If you've ever seen one of those, we have two over here on our property here at Cheehaw Park and Zoo. And they use the air to catch their food. So there's one more animal that we're going to talk about today, and I don't need a demonstration for it because I am a demonstration for it. We're going to talk about humans. So do you think humans are nocturnal or diurnal? The answer probably won't surprise you. We're diurnal, but we actually have a lot of things that would make us really well suited to being nocturnal as well. So let's talk about our eyes. Whenever we looked at the blue-tongued skink, I said that their pupils dilate and that they're able to see color. Our pupils dilate as well. Our pupils also shrink or grow depending on how much light there is, so that we're not constantly being blinded by all this bright light. And we also can see in color really well, which makes us pretty well suited to living during the daytime whenever color is pretty clearly displayed. But believe it or not, our eyes are actually better at seeing in the dark than they are in the daytime. There are two types of things in your eyes, rods and cones. Cones can see color, and rods can detect differences in brightness, in light and dark. So we actually have way more rods than we do cones. So we're able to detect brightness levels a lot better than we can detect color. So we actually are really, really good at like seeing things in the dark. And another thing that helps us see things in the dark is we have a chemical called rhodopsin, which floods our eyes whenever it gets dark. And it actually takes about as long as a sunset for the rhodopsin to fully take effect. So about half an hour to an hour for your rhodopsin to really build in your eyes. And what rhodopsin does is it's just a very fancy chemical that helps your eyes to see in the dark better. It disappears, it reacts to light. So if a bright light hits, it'll disappear suddenly. And actually, if anybody's ever used like an old disposable camera, whenever that flashes, do you ever see spots on your eyes for a few seconds afterwards? That's actually the rhodopsin burning in your eye. It reacts to the sunlight and it disappears. So don't worry, it's not permanent, as you can tell, because you don't have little spots in your eyes now, even though you got flashed by a disposable camera. But that's what you're seeing. You're actually seeing the rhodopsin react to the bright light and burn away. And then it'll take you another half hour to 45 minutes to do it. And actually, our ears are another indication that we are pretty good at seeing in the dark as well. You can tell if a sound is on the right side of your body or the left side of your body really well, right? So like you can tell that if you snap your finger or clap over here on this side, you can tell that it came from this side. And if you clap or snap your finger over here, you can tell it came from this side. If you have your eyes closed though, and somebody say claps their hands in front of you or behind you, you're not going to be able to tell nearly as well. You can try it here whenever we're done. You're not going to be able to tell if something is in front or behind you. That's because your ears are really well suited for determining where things are next to you, and you rely mostly on your eyes to determine if something is in front of you. So if you can't see where the noise came from, you usually assume it's behind you, and if you can, then it's in front of you. So that's one of the ways that we also might be sort of well suited to the nighttime, because we use our eyes to see if something moved, and then we take our ears and we hear that movement and we go, ah, I've pinpointed where that thing is. So we use our eyes and our ears pretty much exclusively for our nighttime stuff. Okay, so in conclusion, nocturnal animals are active at night and they use a bunch of different adaptations like large eyes for absorbing more sunlight, um, special ways of hearing to figure out where things are, silent flying, which both bats and owls do um, to better hunt creatures, echolocation um, to figure out where creatures are, even if you can't see them. And daytime creatures tend to use other things, like they use their hearing and their eyes to determine where stuff is. Um, they to ward off predators, the blue-tongued skink uses a bright blue tongue. Um, we rely on color a lot to determine if what things are versus just relying on hearing or a lot of light and brightness. We rely on movement to see things as well. There's all kinds of adaptations that animals have to suit them better to diurnal or nocturnal. That's everything I have for you guys. Let's see if there were any questions. I don't see any. So thank you guys very much. And I will see you next time.